Oi, what's the best game where you get to eat pie? What's the best game where you play a dead guy? Aye, you'll find out in VG247's podcast. Here, what's the best game where you swing from a rope? And what's the best game where you batter the Pope? That's Street 2. Like I said, you will find out in this here podcast. Hello and welcome to the VG247's Best Games Ever podcast, where we attempt to find the best game within a specific category. For example, this week we want to find the best game that you were ridiculously hyped for as a teen. This topic is interesting for a number of reasons. Firstly, because it depends on when you were a teen. We've got quite a big age range here. This sounds ridiculous, but I honestly couldn't remember when I was a teen. I'm so old that I had to look it up. I mean, I knew it was vaguely the 90s, but I couldn't remember the exact date range. But I was at least certain that I had been a child at one time, which is something that none of us can say for Editor-in-Chief Tom Orry. Hello, Tom.
I went from being like sort of a young child to an adult. I think when I turned 11, 12, that was it. So I missed my the childhood most people remember. I just didn't have. I was just adult.
You've been in your mid-50s for the entire time I've known you, which is getting on for a decade now. So. We're also joined by Associate Editor Alex and Guides Writer Kelsey. How you all doing?
Hello. Yeah, I'm good. Hello.
Fantastic. This is going to be, like I say, this is going to be a weird one because they're all from completely different eras, these games. So the first one I want to go to is Alex. What's your pick?
Okay, so it took me a while to decide this one because I thought about a lot of things. So, hey, and there was some that I felt like it was almost too cliche. So, like, we talked about this the other week, right? Where, do you think of something obvious, and then you go, is that too, like, so I thought about Halo 3. I just remember that Believe trailer and all that sort of stuff and just being like bouncing off the walls about it. I thought about some of the Final Fantasy games and stuff like that. But for me, it came down to, I started to zero in on a feeling, and that feeling is something that I haven't had the last two console generations, which is that feeling of just being absolutely obsessed and so excited about the visual upgrade that your games are getting as you enter a new console generation. And it's a feeling that I miss because definitely going into the PS5 generation, I was just like, looks a bit better. And same really going into PS4, it definitely looks better, but I don't get that ridiculously excited feeling anymore. And for the high definition generation, which is the generation that that was 2006, 2005, 2006. So I was like 16, 17. And for me, that was the first console generation where I was able to look forward to it almost as a young adult, where I had control over my own purchases to some degree and stuff. When the GameCube and the original Xbox and stuff like that launched, I was strictly reliant on parents and Christmases and birthdays, stuff like that. So it's almost like you couldn't get hyped as easily. Because you might be waiting a long time. This was the first console generation where I knew I was going to go out and buy this console on day one. I was saving for it and all that stuff. Anyway, the long story short is the game that defines that to me is Dead Rising. I just remember being absolutely blown away and obsessed with the sheer amount of zombies on screen.
It was incredible for the time, wasn't it? Like, it was a really big technical showcase at the time, it was
incredible with the amount of interactivity. I think the facial animation and stuff looks really rote now, but at that time, if you sat Dead Rising next to Resident Evil 4, it was a really big jump. And obviously this podcast is best game. So there's some games that I was probably a little bit more hyped for that aren't as good a game as Dead Rising. Dead Rising is, without a shadow of a doubt, one of the best first games in an original intellectual property.
I like how you specify first.
Well, yeah, but that's what I mean. Because, you know what I mean? But that's a specific thing, because I think it's hard to come out of the gate with a new IP, doing new and different things, and nail it from the first go.
Especially from a studio that already has like a zombie franchise as well. So
exactly, and you quite often get a decent first game that sort of kicks it off, and then the second game is the one that is really... Uncharted is a really good example of that, right? Where Uncharted 1 is a little bit ropey. It sort of gets by on the fact that it was one of the big PlayStation 3 exclusives and it was a technical showcase. But Uncharted 2 is where that series gets good. And But Dead Rising is not that situation. I have a lot of love for Dead Rising 2. I actually have a lot of love for the third one as well. The fourth one is best forgotten. But that first game is it's still an excellent game. And I just remember the level of hype and the level of excitement that I had was just off the charts. And I remember they had that demo, and it was one of the first downloadable demos for a big AAA game ever. And so not only was it was a big deal because the game was really good, but it was a big deal because it was sort of astonishing that if you had the Xbox with the 20 gig hard drive, which sounds crazy now, right? If you had the 360 with the 20 gig, you could download this chunk of this game and explore that little piece of the mall. Yeah, and I would play that demo repeatedly over and over again, trying to uncover every little thing in it.
It's definitely one of those things where it was like a taster of things to come. Like so much of the early sort of 360 PS3 era was like that, where it was like they had sort of like very much a prototype for things that would come much later, like downloadable games and stuff. Like we take advantage now, just the fact that you can just like buy the latest release without leaving your bed. But that was a big deal back then. What troubles me about this is that I definitely remember being an adult when this came out.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I did think this when I picked it, that's the thing. Your recollection of it is maybe a little bit different. It's maybe that adult recollection. For me, I just remember it's that thing you'd look at screenshots on websites and in magazines, magazines, and you'd just obsess over it. I remember actually being blown away just as much by the level of interactivity, how many items you could pick up and use, as I was by the number of zombies.
All the interactivity is smashing things over zombies' heads, though, isn't it?
It is to a degree, but it's little things like you can go into the record shop and pick up vinyl records and throw them like frisbees, and they do next to no damage. There's lots of
but
things
it's just cool because you can do it.
There's lots of things like that where you would go to your friends. Can you believe that you can go here and you can pick up this toy from this toy store and you can put the toy helmet onto a zombie's head and then he stumbles around because he can't see, and it's just like.
That is pretty good, actually. Okay.
I love Dead Rising so much. I really wish, I use this podcast to shout it out and say, Capcom shouldn't abandon this series. I don't want this to go the way of Breath of Fire or whatever. I do think I would, rather than have a Resident Evil game every 2 years where they do a new one and a remake, maybe they should stop the remakes after 4 and maybe make a Dead Rising instead.
I mean, surely nobody wants a remake of 5, but I think
it's Code Veronica, right? That's what they'll remake if they.
Yeah.
My main disappointment here, Alex, is like you set this up really well with this big backstory. I was like, oh, this is interesting story, Alex. Good storytelling. And I was like, here it comes. I was waiting for King Kong. I thought it was going to be King Kong, but I can't believe it.
But that's the thing.
This over King Kong, the movie, the game.
Because this is what I'm talking about, though. King Kong is fine, and it's the first 1,000. It's the first game that you played for the easy 1,000 game score, right? That's how I remember it. But I thought about in this category. I thought about Perfect Dark Zero because I was so hyped for Perfect Dark Zero.
But it was shite, right?
Well, I'm one of those people who is a low-key Perfect Dark Zero stan, where the story mode is terrible. The story mode is terrible, but I strongly believe bits of the online mode of that game, the infection mode in particular, was literally the best thing on Xbox Live for like 2 years until Halo 3 came out.
Yeah,
on Xbox Live on the 360. The multiplayer was really good. Me and my friends played many hours. It was slim pickings. But I would still play a couple of rounds of Perfect Dark Zero multiplayer now if there was anyone playing it, But like I said, like you sort of got at, the story was shite. It did some terrible things to the character of Joe and that world and that universe and stuff like that. And therefore, it doesn't fit that category of best game. But also, I do genuinely believe, when I think about early Xbox 360, Dead Rising was that first game. With every generation, you wait for that first game where you go, oh, this is next gen. And I think it was Ratchet, right, on PS5, Tom, and we're sort of still waiting for it on Xbox.
Dead Rising had that great trailer, right, where he was on top of the truck and all the zombies are swarming around. Yeah. It's like, wow, this is next gen.
Yeah, the sheer like it was the amount of zombies in the swarm, but also like the density of it and how, like, from what I remember, and it might just be rose tinted memories here, but I remember the swarm, the way they modeled the crowd and the way they animated it, there weren't any sort of like, there wasn't much repetition in like the look of the zombies or the animations and stuff.
By the standards of those days, yeah. I think you look at it now and you go, but yeah, I mean, but and the best thing I can say about this is like my obsession with this game pre-release sort of. It still endures to this day in the sense that like I still subscribe to a YouTube channel. I'm going to shout him out because I think he's fab. It's called Stippo. That's STIP and the number 0. And he is a channel where he's just dedicated to Dead Rising. And all he does is he's got beta discs and he's managed to get hold of like
the sustain an entire channel.
I know he's got like 36,000 subscribers as well. But like he's managed to get hold of like the discs from E3 and stuff like that. So then brilliant. He goes and does all the comparisons of like, this is what it's like here, this is what it's like in the final, examines all the old footage, digs into the game files and pulls the game files apart. He does it for the later Dead Rising games too as well. But yeah, like I've watched pretty much every video on Dead Rising 1 from that channel. And that stems from that sense of unbridled hype that I had when I was a teen, just obsessed over this big new next gen game.
Well, you made quite a pitch for it. So I think now I want to go over to Tom because
why is that funny?
This is going to be like an Amiga game or something, or a Commodore 64 game.
It's because I find everything you do funny, Tom. No, it's because your one is from when I was a teenager, because we're a similar age, and the difference in technology between Alex's pick and this one is. It's a gulf.
It's technologically very advanced, this game, actually.
It was for the time,
but yeah. So, 1996.
Yeah.
I was 13 or so, just a teen. I read a lot of magazines back then, like, I don't know how many, like, all of my pocket money was on magazines more than it was on games. So I probably bought like 5 or 6 a month and just constantly reading about video games. And one of the PlayStation was relatively new. I was super excited about all new PlayStation games. Had a party once where it was just, we had a bag of PlayStation games and used to pick a game out and then we'd have like a challenge playing a PlayStation game. I was quite sad. So front cover of like, I think in my mind, this is on the cover of official PlayStation magazine a lot. It was probably like once, but it was F1, the official video game from Psygnosis. Made by Bizarre Creations, who went on to make PGR. And F1 on the PlayStation was like, I was into F1 back then because everyone was, because it was one of the things that was on TV on like the weekend on Grandstand.
You had like a lot of celebrity kind of drive, well, the like really well-known driver, like Damon Hill was a big star, and and he'd been on Shooting Stars, so everyone loved F1 at that point.
So F1, I was into F1. And like child me was like, yes, this game looks incredible. Like the screenshots in official PlayStation magazine were like, wow, this is unbelievable. Can't believe this is a game, because it looks like that is what the TV looks like essentially. And it had like all the overlays. This is a thing back then, like having a game that had the official like license, so it looked like the TV. Like it had all the official graphics and everything else. Like that wasn't a thing you got much really back then. So that made it seem even more exciting. And then I remember taking the issue that had the review in official PlayStation magazine. I took it with me on holiday because we were allowed to take various things. Like as a kid, you can take some stuff with you on holiday because you're like, I want to take a random toy, or I want to take this action figure. Or I just took this official PlayStation magazine with the review of F1, so I could read it over and over and over again.
That's kind of adorable, I got to be honest.
I mean, I wasn't very, at 13 I was not adorable. That was my bad. I was perfectly nice as a child. I just wasn't physically adorable. I was like, I'd got on the coke by then.
Hang on. Okay.
Yeah, so it wasn't a good era for me. But yeah, I've read this magazine a lot. I said it deliberately to be funny, Jim.
Yeah, no, it's fine.
So I just read this a lot. I was super excited for it. Bought it with my brother, and it's like, whoa, this is amazing. Look how amazing it looks. It's real cars zooming around. Look, F1, etc. But I was just really bad at it. It's very hard. So I didn't really like it that much, to be honest.
So yours was also like a massive disappointment as well.
But it got great reviews. It's got 10 out of 10 in the official PlayStation magazine, I think. So
who
it's
did the review? Anyone you know?
Who did the review? Jeff Kingsley. But yeah, it was a great game. Like, and it went on to spawn like many sequels, like F1 97, 98, 99, 2000, 2001 probably, and this like endless F1 games, right? So it's set up a whole franchise.
Yeah,
for F1, it's that good. Obviously, Psygnosis disappeared. Bizarre Creations are gone.
It's Codemasters that do the F1 games still, isn't it now?
It's Codemasters EA now, yeah. But I don't think they can ever live up to that hype of the very first one, where it was like unbelievable, like that back in the PlayStation era, where you had this first proper 3D version of a thing.
You know, it's mental. As I think back to like adverts for Gran Turismo and stuff from the PS1 era, and I totally agree. At the time, by the standards of the time, you looked at that, and it was like it was running in like really smooth 60, and there was reflections on the cars and stuff, and it genuinely looked real. And because you look at it now, and it doesn't look real at all. There's something about your perception, like decades later, like, well, that looks rubbish. But at the time, it was like, well, this is indistinguishable from reality. I don't know how they're going to do anything better than this. I remember, I don't remember in the 90s. I remember. Might have been one of my mates telling me about this actually, but they were playing Tomb Raider, the original Tomb Raider, with their uncle, and this is Richie Morgan from GameWag, if anyone knows. And his uncle said to him at the time, "I don't know how they're going to make graphics better than this, because this looks like a film."
But I think this is something the younger generation miss out on to a certain degree, because there is a magical moment, especially with sports games and things like that, where there's a magical moment where the first time a game truly resembles, the first 3D FIFA games, right, that had audio commentary. It was just like fucking bonkers.
And it was awful as well. I remember getting I remember the audio commentary was so, because it was streaming off the CD, which is slow, and you'd hear it kind of read the disc, and then it would like Lineker. It would just shout out the name or something rather randomly. It was terrible. But back then, it was like, wow, I can't believe that this game, which is like,
the game knows that it's Lineker. This is incredible,
unbelievable.
And it even extends to things like promotional materials. Like, so I just remember everyone was obsessed with the Mass Effect 2 launch trailer, and people were only obsessed with that with the Two Steps from Hell song on it. And the only reason people are obsessed with that is basically because it was like a film trailer, and game trailers weren't like that. Now all game trailers are like that. So it's that weird thing where younger generations I don't think will ever in quite the same way experience that feeling of, oh my God, this is the same as... No one looked at Avengers and went, oh my God, this is just like the films.
No.
Quite the opposite.
Yeah. I mean,
well, no,
literally the opposite.
Yeah. People said it looked like the figurines you get of those characters in
fucking
Power Man,
hashtag
right?
not my Iron Man and all that shit. Twitter's been weird recently, because there's been a lot of sort of what I assume are younger people complaining about the CGI in that new She-Hulk show. Now, whatever you might think of the new She-Hulk show, I mean, I'm looking forward to it, but like,
yeah, I am. Yeah,
I mean, people complaining about how bad the CGI is and that. It's like, do you remember what television looked like 20 years ago?
Yeah, but Jim, we don't all just watch repeats of Babylon 5, do we?
That is true. That is true. I'm watching Deep Space Nine again now, actually, Tom.
It's actually a funny thing, though, because, like technology, everyone's banging on about, what's it called? Volume.
Yeah.
The giant Disney screen thing. But it's like... And everyone's like, it looks amazing, and it means they don't have to do green screen. But I found quite a few times in Obi-Wan, I thought it looked worse than it probably would have looked. I don't know. This is a real tangent, but it influences the set design and stuff. And that's what I mean.
It does.
It's like the advances now.
Yeah.
I don't think we'll ever be in a period where, until maybe VR becomes more prevalent, I don't think we'll ever be in a period again where the advances are just straight up, this is better, with no weird caveats.
Yeah.
I think
because with Volume, they're all just like standing in front of a telly, essentially. Basically, it's starting to look like that now.
Well, I mean, Jim, they set like huge chunks of Tom's going to roll his eyes at this. They set huge chunks of like the end of Star Trek Discovery's most recent season in a room where they're staring at a big thing because the big thing's on the volume, basically.
Yeah.
And it does look good, but it's like
a lot of standing about in new shows. The blocking's terrible. You see so many shots of people are just standing looking at something.
Yeah.
Anyway. So we're gonna like move from the 90s and we're gonna jump ahead like 20 years.
Yeah, I feel incredibly young. I feel like a baby. But my pick is Resident Evil 7, which was released in 2017. I think. I think I was 16, turning 17 at the time.
Oh man.
That for me, this actually directly continues from the whole Silent Hills being. Well, the cancellation being a huge disappointment to me.
Oh, yeah.
Because the next thing I had to look forward to was a new Resident Evil game, except I couldn't really look forward to that because Resident Evil 6 was crap. So, I honestly kind of forgot about that. But then that came about where the demo got released. And obviously, the demo was scary. And at that point, I was like, okay, well, they're making Resident Evil. Resident Evil being the series that I grew up with because it was what my parents would always play and let me watch at a very, very young age. But so the hype for that was kind of unreal for me because not only that, but I actually had a job at this point, so it was a case of I can actually go and buy my own console. I can pre-order this game. I can actually get excited for it because I'll be able to experience it, and that's exactly what I did. I went out, I bought an Xbox One or something off Facebook Marketplace. Immediately rang my friend and booted up the demo, and then that was it. I remember pre-ordering it and being at college, and I mean I still do this now, but it just isn't the same. But just literally scrolling and refreshing that Amazon order, being like, when's it going to arrive? When's it going to arrive? And I remember. Can I
just say, even the aspect of how you obtained your console, you got it off Facebook Marketplace, is a world apart from
Friday
eras and stories. Yeah.
And I remember being at college and I had this weird day where I had one lesson at like 9 a.m. and one at 4 p.m. And I was like, I'm going to stay at college and I'm going to go home as soon as it gets delivered. Funnily enough, it got delivered when I was in that final lesson. So I should have just left. But I do remember that night being one where I could stay up, play this game, scare myself silly, whilst on the phone to my friend. And I was like, this is everything I've wanted. Not only is it kind of like on my own console, I can play this without limits, but Resident Evil has returned to its horror roots. It's not just churning out action games anymore, which is what 5 and 6 felt like.
Yeah.
So even looking back on that now, like I was watching a playthrough of Resident Evil 7 last night, and like Alex said, it's a feeling. Like the feeling comes back of how just excited I was because I was a horror head. I just wanted something to scare me. Silent Hills wasn't going to be it. Didn't think Resident Evil was, and then it was. Yeah. And yeah,
it's a good choice. I think as an example of the differences in our lives at this point. So you're at college buying your first console. I was just getting over the fact that I lost my job and my career and my company.
Jesus Christ!
Keep it light.
This game was the first game I remember buying. I bought it because I was like, this is a bad time. I'm going to buy a game because I hadn't bought a game for about 15 years at that point because I preloaded them all. So I just thought I'll buy this game, have some fun playing a game for once because I haven't got a job anymore.
I'd left Tom's company to go work on Resi 7. That's and that's what I was doing.
I can speak from the being active in the media at that time, and I think the promotional cycle around that game was excellent. Not just because Jim did some of it, but like like the way that game. I think we talked about exactly this on the podcast before. I think probably when we talked about Silent Hills, but like Capcom had us into the office to show us this VR demo.
Oh yeah,
the kitchen demo, but they didn't. They presented it not as Resident Evil. They were just like, this is a new horror thing we're working on. So I was like, oh, this is going to be a new IP, like Dead Rising was a new IP, because that's the thing. Horror and Capcom didn't necessarily mean it was going to be Dead Rising, because Resident Evil, because it was only one generation prior that they'd done Dead Rising. So it's like, oh, it's going to be a new VR IP. And then fast forward maybe 5 months, maybe 4 months, and you go to E3 and you're in the Sony, and I was there in the Sony conference, and they have that first trailer where they're singing Go Tell Aunt Rhody, and it's not very clear it's Resident Evil 7 until the end, but I could tell it was the same demo that I'd played, and I probably twigged maybe 30 seconds before the logo came up that that's what it was, and I was like, oh fuck. And then they had a really good demo, and I
just really remember that like sort of oh fuck moment when the trailer was released, of just being like, crap, like this is actually going to be scary. It's not just going to be another Chris Redfield doing Chris Redfield things. Like, this is going to be terrifying, and it was. So,
well, I've said before, I really enjoy that in that game, as far as it being a good game goes, the pacing is such that Resi 7 is like a microcosm of the whole series. You start out alone and terrified with no weapons. You gradually get weapons, and as you go through the phase of the game, it very seamlessly works it, so it feels completely natural that by the end of the game, you're basically Rambo, and you're not quite punching boulders, but you have got a submachine gun. You're just blowing enemies that you were terrified of 8 hours prior away in droves, and I think it's just so perfectly pitched.
It's a really brilliant sort of like role reversal fantasy, isn't it? You are like terrified of these entities for so much of the game, and then and you get to live that fantasy of being like, no, fuck you, like. You know, that zombie's just like every dickhead you've had to speak to at work that day, you know. Really, really perfectly pitched. That Don't Tell Aunt Rosie trailer was... I can just say as well, I wasn't responsible for any of the good marketing, so I can say this. That trailer was incredible. It's so atmospheric and so like, and still a bit spine tingling actually when you think about it. Like if you watched it now, I think it would still have a real impact, as like a lot of the best trailers do. So, Resi 7 was fantastic.
F1 probably didn't have a trailer before trailers, so that's unfair. That's unfair.
Who did the?
I didn't ask to be this young.
I don't know. Trailers would happen. I remember you'd buy like official Nintendo magazine. It'd come in like a VHS. I remember like if you're talking about most memorable, maybe this is a topic one day, but most memorable video game trailer or something like along those lines. I remember a trailer for Star Fox 64 that was on a VHS tape where I almost wore that VHS tape out watching that trailer over and over again.
Yeah,
oh, Jesus. Did the F1 in 1996 have Murray Walker on it? Or was that
I say yes. I don't know.
Or was that later games? He was definitely involved at some point.
I'm sure he was. So they were trying to get as like authentic as possible, weren't they? So I assume he was in there at some point.
I'm sure I remember reading in an official PlayStation magazine at the time that there was a cheat to make Murray Walker it just went through the commentary randomly, so it didn't correspond to anything that was actually happening on the track. And in the magazine, they were like, and you can't tell the difference. So yeah, God rest him, Murray Walker. Keep it light, Tom. I've got to pick something now, and really tempted to pick Resi 7 because I worked on it.
I was like, Capcom's done quite well here.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to say actually, so there's like. So with your two picks, there's like you've got the Capcom connection, but also the you both mentioned about how it was like your first sort of experience of being able to go and buy something yourselves and enjoy it on your own terms. And
I bought my PlayStation myself. I work down the mines
in the circus.
I've been working since I was 10.
What were you doing at 10?
Is that why you went from child to adult just immediately?
I was cleaning pubs.
I mean, that would age you a few decades, wouldn't it? Mm. You were cleaning pubs at 10 years old?
Yeah, I used to go out and clean pubs with my mum, clean restaurants, and I used to go out in weekends, get up at 4 o'clock in the morning, clean pubs with my uncle. Was
this like before Elizabeth was coronated, or?
It's a long time ago, yeah.
Jesus Christ.
I've worked my way up. I've worked my way up to where I am.
All right. Well, I think I'm going to... it's the three really good picks, actually. I genuinely don't know which one to pick, but I think I'm going to go for... I think I'll go for F1 because it's the only... And I have to do it for really selfish reasons. It's the only one of the three that doesn't make me feel a billion years old because it actually happened when I was a teenager. So, and the other two happened when I was definitely grown up and an adult. And I just, I have to pick that one because I'm feeling really mortal at the moment. So on that basis, on that really thin and flimsy basis, F1 from 1996 that may or may not have had Murray Walker in it is the best game that you were ridiculously hyped for as a teenager.
Thanks.
F1 1996. Unbelievable.
You did this last week when you won, and then you were like, thanks.
I've just realised I've got this game.
I wonder if it was 95 even. It might have been 95. I can't remember. Maybe it was not. I think it was 96.
No, I think it will be 96 because this game was just called Formula 1.
He gets such a face on every time he doesn't win, and then when he does win, he don't give a shit.
It's because it's like that kind of... I'm very humble. So I'm like, I don't want to brag about it, do I? I don't want other people to win, but I also, when I do win, I don't want to rub it in their faces.
It's always good when someone humble goes on a podcast.
Like I said, you will find out in this here podcast.
If you enjoyed the show, please give us a 5-star review wherever you get your podcast. It really helps us get the word out. We're not just a podcast, of course. If you'd like to hear more from the team, then check out VG247.com for our fantastic news coverage, features, reviews, and game guides. Thank you so much for listening. Goodbye.